All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for your patience today and your patience with Zoom. I know that Zoom has been sending out a lot of repeat emails and invitations and everything. And so we're trying to get that worked out with their company and limit the number of emails that you're getting. But welcome to today's broadcast. It's a little bit of an extra special day today because it's the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that, but if you did anything special to celebrate Earth Day or Earth today, then we would love to hear about it. So if you want to share what you did with us, then please go ahead and send an email to Amanda with some pictures or a description of what you did. Also, if you didn't get a chance to do anything, then we have an opportunity for you as well. Earlier today, we did a live stream from the lagoon, and you can find that on our Facebook page. So if you want to get a little bit of nature experience today, then you can check that out later on as well. So we are going to get started with today's Behind the Science, a Wednesday web chat. And so this is our experience where we get to highlight our wonderful researchers here at Harbor Branch. I'm Madeline Arencibia from the Outreach and Engagement team, and I'll be your host as per usual. Today's web chat is going to feature Dr. Matt Ajemian, the director of our Fish Ecology and Conservation Research Lab. Matt has done a ton of research throughout his career on animals ranging from shellfish to sharks and rays. He's been at Harbor Branch since January 2016, and his work today focuses on ecology and conservation of vulnerable fisheries and species. And so we'll get to hear some more about that from him coming up soon. While we're doing our little intro, couple reminders: if you're on Zoom and you have any questions for Matt during our live stream, then please go ahead and use that Q&A button bottom center of the screen to ask those questions. Also, if you're on Facebook, we want to hear from you guys too, so please leave your questions in a comment and we'll be able to get to those during the second half of our stream as well. So Matt, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Madeline, and happy Earth Day, everyone. Very excited to be here.
So let's get started. I guess before we get into the questions of everything, the first thing I want to ask is, what are 3 things that we should know about you?
Okay, well, I guess here I'm going to point out things that don't have to do with my career, but I really love football. I used to be an inner-city football coach when I was in college in Boston. I'm also a musician. I really enjoy playing bass guitar. I play in a band sporadically here at the up and down the Treasure Coast of Florida. We're called Lex Grubius. You can check us out. And I really love, maybe this one isn't that surprising, but I really love seafood, and particular crustaceans are my big weakness.
Okay. Where's the best seafood around here that you'd recommend?
Oh, without a doubt, 12A buoy. Highly recommended.
Good to know. So clearly seafood. We talked about you're a shark and ray guy more these days. What really got you interested in science, and what led you to decide to pursue a career in science?
Right. Well, good question. I think like many kids, growing up, I was obsessed with things like dinosaurs and sharks and I guess charismatic megafauna, things that live in the sea that inspire awe and beauty and things like that. And I had a very supportive family, and particularly my parents who brought me to museums and aquariums, and I really developed a love for those places at a young age, because, you don't really see a lot of that on your day-to-day as a young kid. And I can still remember, being at the Museum of Natural History and standing under the big, blue whale model, and just thinking how small and relatively unimportant, I was. And I think there's a picture here. Yeah, there it is there. So it's a daunting feeling that there's marine life out there like this that, you just don't see. And I guess it inspires more interest and inquiry into, what are the other mysteries that lie beneath the sea. So I became a underwater naturalist very early, and could really never shake my love and desire of learning more about, what lies beneath. And, it's kind of we talk about knowing more about life on Mars than we do in the deep sea, and that's a true thing. And, there's not really obviously much on Mars, but we don't really know a lot about the ocean, and it was just a surprising and dramatic thing for me at a young age, and still is to this day.
So your inspiration, I think it's probably a lot of people's inspiration. I know for me, I grew up outside DC, so it was all those museums all the time. But what was your journey to getting to where you are today, from that little kid that was awed by the blue whale?
Right. Well, I studied very hard. I moved around quite a bit, and lived in Massachusetts. I went to school in Boston. For undergraduate, I moved back to New York, Long Island, where I'm from, to do my master's degree. I did a Ph.D. down in Alabama, right? So a New Yorker, but I moved to the South, which was an interesting transition. And then I did a postdoc in Texas, and then I eventually moved back to Florida. So, I think making a commitment to being flexible as to where I would live, was a really important thing. And as well as, that flexibility, I think, helped me diversify in terms of what I did, right? So at some point in my career, I worked on, rays, another point on sharks, most recently on reef fish, so this diversity has been important, and I think is also very, it supports, having a diverse portfolio of interests, and I think allows you to be able to work on different things. So I attribute, a lot of my success to kind of being, a generalist, if you will, and being able to work on many different things. Because a lot of people, want to pigeonhole themselves very early in their careers, and I think, there is benefit to having, a broad array of interests and capabilities.
Okay, that makes sense for sure. And it's, I'm sure, led to a lot of really cool experiences. But what was it about Harbor Branch that made you decide to move back here to Florida?
Right. Well, I knew about Harbor Branch ever since I was a kid. That the Harbor Branch brand, was in my head. Their history, its history of, ocean exploration. You see a lot of documentaries as a child. In the Big Johnson Sea Lynx submersibles. You see all this, and it became something you always wanted to be a part of. A group of scientists who are always on the edge of discovery. And that's something truly, truly desirable for a young aspiring scientist to be a part of that team. So an opportunity came up 5 years ago, almost to this day, when I interviewed, where the Institute was looking for a fish biologist. And, I saw some great opportunities there with respect to being in a really great place and learning from other scientists. And, the proximity to the places like Indian River Lagoon, which is literally in the backyard of Harbor Branch. I mean, I knew about this place and all the diversity of fish that I could work on. So it seemed like a really great match. In addition to that, it's not just, it's got that marine lab aspect, a feeling of community that you can really gauge when you're kind of walking through campus and going to the cafe and seeing all the scientists kind of together and eating lunch. And, I really want to be a part of that. I came from an atmosphere like that during my PhD, and I knew it's where I wanted to build my career. So that's for great. All those reasons.
Yeah, I can definitely attest that the Harbor Branch community is definitely a supportive and close one. Everybody hangs out together outside of work too frequently. So getting back into sort of your research projects that you've been doing throughout your entire career, it seems like you've gotten a lot of cool opportunities. What would you say has been your favorite project that you've worked on, and why?
Yeah, there's been a lot of really neat things I've been fortunate enough to work on. I think one of the more exciting things has been working on the white-spotted eagle ray. It's a really unique species. It's, this is a ray that we know so little about, yet they have this amazing, these amazing characteristics. They get really big. They almost get, 7 feet, 8 feet across, hundreds of pounds. They have really powerful jaws. And also really beautiful, like the spot pattern that you see in that picture on the dorsum or the back of the ray. We can use that to actually ID animals, but it's a very difficult species to work with, I think, because we don't know a lot about it. So I think, anytime we're working on something like that, there's always a new discovery, right? There's always a new opportunity, and that's been really rewarding over the years. I also really enjoy the thrill of capturing them. It's kind of like, this energy you get when you're looking for them in shallow environments like this, and you see them, and then we typically will encircle them in the net, and it's a really challenging thing to do, and it takes the coordination of a lot of people, and we've gotten pretty darn good at it, and it's really rewarding when you can do that, safely land the animal, take samples, learn about it. There's so many things to know about this species, and I really enjoy working with it.
Honestly, I've already learned something new. I mean, I knew that with a lot of different types of animals, you can use patterns to identify individuals. I didn't realize that was true of spotted eagle rays as well.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like it would be kind of difficult though, because there's a lot of spots.
Yeah, you got to use like software and computer programs. I've gotten really good at that, but yeah.
So computer programming would be a secret skill that has to come with your research then?
Well, yeah, actually, believe it or not, we're working more with computer scientists than I think biologists ever have, because there's tremendous opportunity there, between the cross collaboration. We're working together to identify sounds underwater, identify visual patterns. In fact, some of the techniques we use to identify what kind of sounds we're hearing are based on visual recognition techniques. So, there's a lot of great cross exchange between biologists and computer scientists. So if you're interested in science, I mean, getting sort of computer programming skills and that knowledge is very helpful.
Yeah, definitely. The world is expanding very quickly in terms of technology, and it's helping everywhere. So from all of your research experiences, what is the coolest place that your work has ever taken you?
Right. Again, a lot of nice places I've been to. Probably the most memorable, though, is up in Alaska. When I was a graduate student, I had an opportunity to be a part of something called the Pacific Ocean Shelf Tracking Project. We were tracking the migrations of multiple species. And this is a picture of me up there in almost 2007, actually, 13 years ago. And Alaska is amazing because there you are, looking at this, giant mountain, overhead of you, with waterfalls rushing down from, glaciers into water that's, within a stone's throw of shore, hundreds of feet deep. I mean, you wouldn't believe how deep it gets there. And this area of the Prince William Sound, I mean, there's orcas, there's so much, life to see, and it's just absolutely astounding in the summertime. I have been up there in December, and it's not quite the same scene, but still just, absolutely breathtaking. I think everyone, who has an opportunity to see Alaska should, just because there's so much amazing wildlife, and nature is just absolutely astounding there.
Probably you'd be wearing a few more layers during the winter time though.
Right. Yeah, that picture there was from a warm day.
Yeah. So then what was the coolest animal that you've ever encountered throughout all of your work?
Yeah, so you're seeing a picture there kind of come and go. That's a baby white shark. the great white shark, the one that everybody thinks of from Jaws. And, this is a species, unfortunately, that's inspired a lot of fear, across the world. And, there's been some setbacks because of that. But, actually seeing one of these animals up close and personal, I mean, you really get a sense for how awesome they are. Those teeth, that conical head, they're just built like a torpedo with, incredible design. And, seeing one up close that looks just like the adults, just sort of like a cleaner, neater, tighter version. It was absolutely amazing. And the big joke in my lab is it took me 3 years. So I actually went up to Long Island 3 years in a row in the summertime, where I'm originally from, to try and see one of these animals, because we were studying the nursery that they have up there. And I missed them, 2 or 3 years in a row, and finally got to see one last summer. So this is a picture we took, and here we're actually removing the hook from this animal. So this animal is technically a baby. It's only a couple of months old, but it was, every bit of about 5 or 6 feet long.
Wow. Might be a controversial opinion, but I think it kind of looks cute. Its little eyes and mouth. But definitely, I can see why you'd want to see one of those up close and personal. That must have been an amazing experience for sure.
It sure was. I'll never forget that.
So the next question that I've got here is, during your research, have you ever had a surprising result that led to something kind of exciting?
Yeah, we certainly have. This happens more often than you think, but as an example, this past November, we were in the Bahamas. We were studying a species of fish called bonefish, which a lot of sport fishermen know about. This is, the prize species that people want to catch when flats fishing, like in the Florida Keys, the Bahamas, and throughout the Caribbean. And despite living in a few feet of water or less, most of its lifetime, every year, once they're adults, they aggregate into this massive ball. And what it is what we call pre-spawning aggregation. So they're aggregating together, they're getting ready to spawn, to release sperm and eggs. And they do this in really deep water. And until this fall, we didn't really know how deep they went. So we tracked some of these animals using these acoustic transmitter tags. And we followed them off the continental shelf into water that was, almost 400 feet deep. And this is, beyond, we knew they spawned offshore, but this is beyond anything we would have ever imagined for this species. So, and when we were doing this, this was, basically in the dark. We're tracking this animal at the surface, but because of the transmitter's power, we're able to hear it as it's sending us information from the depths. So there's a picture that I have here of the track. We were up for, some ungodly amount of time, I'd say 24 hours. And this is about 5:30 in the morning on the full moon, which you can see it's actually really bright here. And this is where and when the fish were spawning. So you're at the surface, you're listening for all this activity going on. And, it was an absolute pleasure. I was able to share this experience with my first Ph.D. student, Steve Lombardo, and he's working on some of this as part of his dissertation. So that was also really rewarding, as being out there, with the student, to see how excited I was, but how exciting this could be for our research. So this was a really cool and unexpected thing, that they'd be diving this deep to presumably spawn.
Wow, yeah, that's definitely surprising. How big is a bonefish typically?
Yeah, so at the adult, size, when they're spawning, about a couple feet long. Yeah, they tend to get really kind of girthy as they're, particularly the females, as they're about to spawn, but not too much bigger than that. That whole time, when they're in that ball of, or this aggregation, there's, big sharks kind of circling around, waiting for a bonefish, it seems like, to do the wrong thing, so they kind of hunker down together. And it's really amazing. You'd see these images of these balls of fish on the sonar of your boat. That's how impressive it is, how dramatic it is.
Yeah, awesome. So my next question is, could you tell us the importance of your work and how it's relevant to our everyday lives? How is bonefish spawning gonna matter to the everyday person?
Right. Well, understanding fish behavior, their ecology, which means, understanding where they are, how they move, what they eat. All these things are really important in order to manage the species, right? These aspects of their behavior and their life history, this is how, we decide and make decisions on, okay, well, if this is a exploited or a fishery species, meaning something we catch to eat or catch for sport or fun, we need to know at what size and in what areas to permit fishing, to permit harvest and that kind of thing. We can only really know that with a strong understanding of where they are, what they're doing. So understanding, their ecology and revealing the lives, is what we're doing, is we're revealing, what they're doing on a day-to-day basis or where they're eating, and it's basically their life history. This is absolutely crucial to being able to support sustaining those populations, because if we don't know where they are, what they're doing, how do we manage them? How do we, protect areas against fishing? You brought up the spawning aggregation sites. I mean, that's a very sensitive area, and many fish stocks have been overexploited or over-extracted because fishermen were extracting fish from these really aggregated situations. So you get a lot of fish, a lot of bang for your buck, but unfortunately also disproportionately reduce the population. So knowing these things about the behavior of fish and their ecologies is really supporting their persistence and sustainability. And we depend on fish, right? We either feed on them or we like to fish for them. We like to see them out in the wild, like particularly most sharks and rays. We don't tend to fish for those as much, but they have ecotourism value at the same time, right? So there are benefits to society. The work that I do, there's a lot of benefits, both economically and ecologically and socially.
Yeah, definitely. And we know that tourism is important in Florida, and so having people wanting to come and see our animals, we got to have those animals here. So, so great, thank you. So if you could accomplish one thing over the course of your career, what do you hope it is?
Yeah, I guess if it's something real tangible, certainly I'd love to publish in, Science or Nature, one of the real high-end journals in our field. But I'd say, just in general, somehow getting some sense that people understand how they're linked to the coast, right? And our resources that they depend on, our actions, our behaviors have repercussions for those resources. So just I guess some peace of mind that that we've improved in that vein.
Yeah, that's definitely an important thing. Hopefully it works. I have faith that you will have that success and inspire that connection in people. So if you weren't a scientist, do you know what profession you would choose?
Yes. Well, I had many, despite my real interest in ocean life, I had a couple of veins or directions that I had wanted to go down. I considered being a medical doctor, but I could really never shake my love for the ocean. So, I pulled away from that rather quickly. I really enjoy geography and maps and things like that, so I'd say, I'd be interested in being like a treasure hunter or something like that. I just love the idea of exploring underwater, and I really enjoy being underwater. I've also contemplating being a pilot because I really enjoy flying. Again, I really enjoy maps and geography and that kind of thing. So I'd say those would be good backup professions.
Okay, well, they could always be hobbies, especially around here. We've got all the treasure hunting that happens on the Treasure Coast, and there's like 3 airports locally that I think you could do flight school at if you really wanted to.
I guess I'm in the right place.
Maybe some things to explore, and I'm sure all of your free time when you're not publishing and doing research.
Right.
So a quick reminder for our audience, if you guys have any questions for Matt, please ask them. Again, on Zoom, use that Q&A button, bottom center of the screen. On Facebook, just comment your questions. We'll be getting to them in just a couple of minutes. I think I only have like one more question before I get to yours. So yeah, so my next question, you sort of touched on it a little bit earlier, but what advice would you give for a future scientist or young person who's interested in pursuing marine science as a career? One of the things we said, computer science is definitely helpful, but beyond that.
Right. Well, the one thing I say is everybody seems to land their, I guess, positions, be it your first job or entrance into graduate school or connecting with a mentor who will support you through grad school. It happens differently. The same path really doesn't exist. I guess what I've understood over the years is that there's not this single recipe for success. I do think it's important for you to develop really strong scientific or quantitative skills, no matter what stage you're in, because having strong academics is going to open the doors for you, right? And but you don't have to go to school knowing exactly what you're going to study for the rest of your life. Meaning, you don't need to go into school thinking you're going to study sharks. That's it, right? In fact, that pigeonholes people to some degree. So I think it's important to have a little bit of flexibility with respect to that. I also think, in addition, to your academic prowess or your scientific achievements, it's really important to network and getting to know people. That will also open doors for you. So, if you're struggling to get into graduate school, right, because you don't have the academics yet, and you're building up to that, work for somebody who might be able to provide you a good reference, and maybe it's an internship, maybe it's a volunteership. If you're able to, contend with that, not everybody can do that, but it's important to network, attend or a conference if you can. Even if it's at the undergraduate level. High school has grown in terms of the types of programs that they have. In fact, we have a great one at Harbor Branch, as you know, Madeline. That's a magnet program with the Marine Oceanographic Academy. That's a great way to kind of, if you're going to go into this field, I mean, that's a great way to establish connections with scientists and have opportunities to work in labs and things like that. So I think the combination of strong academics, but being able to network and build up a reputation is equally as important as well.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, definitely good advice. It makes all the difference. So we're gonna get to some questions from the public now. So first question I've got is from Jeannie. She said, "We missed it. Where is the museum with the whale?"
Okay. Yes, that was the American Museum of Natural History in New York City.
Okay. I was thinking of the Natural History Museum in DC because that's what I grew up around, but that makes sense because you're from New York.
It's another great museum there. But yeah, that is the one in New York City, and it's on Central Park West and I think 80th or something like that. So it's a wonderful spot. Highly recommend it.
I'll have to check it out sometime. I haven't gotten to check out most of the museums in New York, but oh, there's that picture again for anyone who might have missed it. So the next question is from Jennifer. And it is, what is the most interesting thing about the ocean that you think most people don't know?
Okay. Well, I think what I've only learned very recently actually is that the ocean, if you haven't been in it, swimming under it, it's a pretty noisy place. And actually, as beautiful and diverse as it is in terms of colors and shapes of animals and organisms and things like that, equally as diverse and interesting as the sound. You know, and I really didn't have a good appreciation for this, I think, until I started to listen a lot more. You know, we have some studies where we're listening to how grouper call and under different types of conditions, right? And so that's requiring a lot of listening to underwater, you know, sound. And it's amazing, you know, the variety of things that you can hear. You know, there's fish chorusing, there's shrimp snapping, there's, you know, obviously the marine mammals like whales and things like that make some really interesting low frequency sounds, and you know, there's just an incredible amount of diversity associated with it, and it wasn't something I really appreciated, I think, until recently. So that's another great thing about this field: constantly learning. You know, I'm always going to be learning, and that's an extremely rewarding thing.
I definitely agree with that. Next question is from Amy. If you could be a fish, what fish would you be and why?
Oh man, that's a good one.
Yeah, I'm very curious.
Yeah. Well, again, I got to go back to the rays because, and I'll go back to my spotted eagle ray. I love eating shellfish. Really. So there's that. And, you know, being a ray underwater is about what the equivalent of being a bird in the air is. So being able to kind of, you know, soar and hold yourself up in currents and things like that. I mean, they seem to do it quite effortlessly. And, you know, I think that would be a really neat thing to do. So
And
eating shellfish and flying, I mean, as I told you, those are the two professions that, or two interests, you know, of mine, on the personal level and professional level. So I think that's.
Spotted eagle rays can jump out of the water and sort of fly in the air too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it flying in the air. You know, they're not able to obviously, you know, withstand being up in the air for too long. But yeah, they'll leap out of the water. We don't really know why. It's kind of debated. Some people think it's, you know, trying to remove parasites that they have. Other folks suggest it's has to do with mating, particularly when a female is turning down a male, she'll jump out of the water, expressing her, you know, non-desire to mate with them.
Hey, it's a good way to do it. I'm just gonna leave. We got a question actually about spotted eagle rays. What are a couple things you've learned about them so far?
Oh man, lots of things. Well, number one, what's been really interesting on the Treasure Coast is that it seems like they don't really seem to leave their inlets. So we've tagged animals at the St. Lucie Inlet, Fort Pierce Inlet, and Sebastian Inlet. And over an annual cycle, they might leave and travel somewhere else. So say maybe up by the Cape or further north to St. Augustine, but they'll always come back to their same inlet for whatever reason. And, you know, so we call that site fidelity. And we're not really sure why that is or how they know to get back to the same spot, but it's certainly something we're seeing and we're very interested in exploring further.
That's cool.
The other thing, yeah, and the other thing we've learned is that, I mean, they spend a lot of time in these inlets, a lot more than we would have thought. You know, such a dynamic place, as you guys and our viewers may know. When the tide changes, you know, these things can be really, you know, it can be like white water flowing through there, and they still hang around, you know, for whatever reason. I don't know if it's easy for them to hang because they're basically gliding like a bird underwater and using all that flowing water to give them lift. And it's maybe not as hard as it seems to us to persist in that environment. But that's, yeah, it's been something very interesting to us.
Cool. Next question is from Robert, and he asks, is the sandbar shark really the best shark?
Well, it is a pretty neat shark. I will give it credit. This shark has the biggest dorsal fin relative to its body size, I think, of most species that I know of. But as far as being the best shark, I'm not really sure I know. But it is pretty cool for many reasons. We have some really cool stories about sandbar sharks. For example, we tagged some when I was in Texas on some offshore artificial reefs. So we go to these artificial reefs, we dive them. We'd always see a shark there, always a sandbar shark, one lonely sandbar shark. We finally got to tagging them with acoustic transmitters and tracking them, across the Gulf and up and down the East Coast. We found that some of them actually do this quite regularly. They exchange between the Gulf of Mexico and places like Virginia, which is where one of the biggest sandbar shark nurseries is in the country, on the edge of the Chesapeake Bay there. So they're pretty cool, I'm not gonna lie. Nice big dorsal fin. Are they the best shark? I don't know that I agree.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Next question is from Tesha. What's your favorite fish to catch? I hear you're a fisherman.
Yes. So growing up, one of the other ways I got to interact with the ocean, besides going to museums, was getting out on the water and fishing. I was not that good of a fisherman. My siblings like to tease me about that a little bit, but I love fishing on the bottom. So for snapper and grouper, it's probably my favorite because you're kind of, I like the feel of sort of drifting along the bottom and suddenly getting a big pull on your line there. I really enjoy that feeling a lot. So bottom fishing is no doubt my favorite type. But I'm starting to learn how to fly fish for things like bonefish. I'm not very good at it, but I'm trying. And I do also enjoy trolling for pelagics. That's a lot of fun. It's one of those things where you're kind of, nothing's going on for a long time and then suddenly it's crazy, So I really enjoy fishing for all types of species, even inshore stuff like redfish and trout. So they all have their days and their pluses and minuses.
I hear that the Harbor Branch campus is one of the better places to go fishing sometimes.
There's quite a diverse array of species that come in and out of there. And yes, if you listen to any of the local fishing reports, one of the best places to catch speckled trout or spotted sea trout is right outside the canal there. And we have a whole host of animals that come in and out. I've seen Goliath grouper there. I've seen, you name it, it comes in and out of the Harbor Branch Canal.
Wow, I didn't realize Goliath grouper would come in here. Now I have one.
Yeah, mainly juveniles, but yeah, they come in there.
Okay. The next question is from a different Jennifer. Do you feel the entertainment industry could do a better job at producing stories about the ocean, be it documentary or narrative? Is there a specific story you think needs to be told?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the charismatic, animals, obviously there's Shark Week and things like that. They get a lot of the attention, but there's really interesting and diverse marine life everywhere in the ocean you look. So maybe a documentary about the unsung heroes, or in terms of interesting animals or interesting ecosystems. I think that could be brought to life a little bit. Obviously working in clear water with big animals, it lends itself really well to documentaries and things like that. But places where the water is really not clear, like estuaries, right? And areas where you get a lot of river runoff and things like that. There's actually a lot going on there. It's not as diverse, or it doesn't have the colors of coral reefs and things like that, but it's actually full of life. You know, I think people forget that a lot. You know, you think to go study something in the ocean, you have to go somewhere with there's clear water and charismatic megafauna, but you know that's not true always. And much of the sea doesn't look like that. You know, so it's actually these kind of dynamic environments I think are equally as interesting because, you know, if you take the Indian River Lagoon, on a tide shift, right? It could look like the Bahamas, or it could look like, you know, pea soup, or you know, if we've had a lot of rain, the Mississippi River, and you know that those transitions and that dynamic sort of behavior is really amazing to me, and it may be underappreciated.
Unsung heroes of the sea. I think you should pitch that to someone. Next question is from Anne. How many different shark species have you seen in the Indian River Lagoon?
Yeah, so I can tell you sharks and rays, it's somewhere close to about 16. Bull sharks are very common in the Indian River Lagoon. We've seen lemon sharks, although only sporadically, nurse sharks. We've seen young sandbar sharks. No white sharks, sorry. But we have seen white sharks offshore at Fort Pierce. That's another story. Things like small coastal species, sharp nose, black nose, bonnet heads, and things like that. So, you know, about a half dozen to a dozen species that come in there. Every once in a while, you get something like a tiger shark, but they tend to spend more of their time offshore.
Last question for the day is from Stephanie, and she's asking, what is the most rewarding part of your job?
Well, there are a lot of rewarding pieces, but you know, I think, you know, being outside is something I've always wanted to do, is have a way to do that, you know, and it becomes harder, especially when you're getting more administrative responsibilities like I am these days, but you know, I still get to do it, and that's a great thing. And then I get to share in these amazing discoveries on the water with students and young scientists, and that's probably the most rewarding thing is seeing that, like, you know, these experiences are going to carry on and have some sort of continuity over the years. I think that's a really special feeling that I get, and really why I love having you know, students in my lab and people who I can see grow and change and become you know, the next generation of scientists.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for answering all of our questions, Matt. That's been great.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
And then, of course, as always, thank you to our audience for asking so many great questions and for tuning in. Next week's Behind the Science is going to feature Dr. Tracy Mincer. Tracy is a microbiologist who is actually a dual hire at FAU. He works on two campuses, both the Harbor Branch campus and the Harriet Wilkes Honors College in Jupiter. One of his main interests and focuses for his work is trying to understand the fate of plastic marine debris in our oceans and its association with microbes. And he also works in natural product discovery and microbial ecology. So we hope that you guys will zoom in next week to hear more about him and join us for that. In the meantime, if you want to learn more about Harbor Branch, then please visit our website at www.fau.edu/HBOI. On that site, you can read more about our research and also check out our new page that features our awesome virtual resources that we've been working on developing. You can see that there. That's also where you can find all of the previous episodes of Behind the Science. So we hope that you guys stay healthy and have a wonderful evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Bye.